Lionel, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Check.
Check.
Is that Birmingham?
It is Birmingham. Is that Florida or is that Canada?
It's Florida. It's
ooh boy, Southern Studio, Lionel.
It's DeBary, Florida, in Volusia County, and I'm just 10 miles down the road from the county seat. Are you familiar, Derek? Are you familiar with the Beverly Hillbillies?
I am.
You must have as a 32. You're 32 still, right?
I'm 32 for another month or two.
Okay. What month is your birthday?
It's in April.
So is mine.
No way.
Oh.
Which date, if you don't mind me asking?
It's right in the middle of the month.
Okay. Mine's in around the 2/3 mark.
Okay. So we're like, so I'm like, let's leave it at that for right this minute.
Yeah,
we'll talk.
There we go.
We'll come back to that on another day.
Very nice. Maybe we'll do a birthday pod.
Yeah. So you're an Aries.
That I don't know about.
Okay. Well, I would have thought you would be a guy that I would have thought you'd be a guy that not necessarily a horticultural guy. What is it?
Horoscope?
Yeah, horoscope.
Yeah. I'm not a horticulture guy either. So,
no, exactly. Yeah. So anyways, this podcast is going to be, lots of people have reached out to us. So we got lots of people to interview. And one of the people that reached out to us is our buddy, Joe Desmond, who was on the podcast, I think 3 or 4 times over the last 10 years. And Joe is a retired police officer. And he has the thing that we got to get across to people is Joe has a beautiful N-scale Conrail layout that is absolutely spectacular. And then I thought, well, Joe, let's get Joe back on the podcast. So, Derek, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I remember the last time Joe was on the podcast was back in, 2020, 2021. I remember it being COVID times and stuck in the house and listening to AML and really enjoying the interview with Joe Desmond. And I remember where I was, and I remember, listening to it, and it had an impact on me. It got me back into the layout room and back to building my last layout. So I'm excited to talk to him today. He has a great layout.
And let's remember our new rules established by the Wednesday night crew, the crew that gathers together on the Patreon channel. If you're a Patreon member of the AML, and it's a few cents a day right now, it's $5 a month, and you join that $5 a month every Wednesday. Everybody gets together, and so we've been discussing the podcast going forward with the crew, and they're quite happy with shorter podcasts. So this might be a 2-parter with Joe. This might be part 1 of 2 parts.
I think we're looking at least 3 parts with Joe.
It depends on how much time people have. Don't you have a job?
Yeah, a couple of them, but I mean, that doesn't get in the way of creating a good podcast.
The other day you were about to tell me, you told me your main job and you were about to tell me your second job. So we're going to have to come back to that on another day, and you can explain to me because you're one of these. I love being part of young people in today's world, because I think there's a lot of really cool young people that we need to figure out how, and I think those are the people that are making the hobby grow, because they're finding it. And you have your main job, but then you're always doing a startup, you and your startups.
Startups are fun, but they don't pay as well. But then there's also side hustles. And so between side hustles and startups, keeps me busy and keeps me engaged.
And making plain pizza.
It's not plain pizza. It's restrained, high quality ingredients.
Well, I've been thinking about that since the last time we talked about it. And I'm like, I'm not, it's not a case of like my wife likes basically pizza with cheese and maybe a bit of pepperoni. And I'm thinking, what's the point? Like, you need a lot of meat and stuff. But
have you ever had mozzarella aged in a cave?
No, I have not.
You see, Yeah. Yeah. Come over to the dark side.
All right. Mozzarella aged in a cave. You know what? That'll be the first question we ask Joe when he comes in. If he's ever
Let's
had,
do it.
yeah, okay. Can you go ask him to come into the studio?
Hey, Joe, are you still there?
Hey, yeah, I'm still here.
Hey, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Were you listening to us when you were in the green room?
I heard something about aged mozzarella cheese in
Yeah.
a cave.
It has to be in a cave, apparently.
Never tried that.
Well, let me tell you, it changes your pizza experience forever.
I'll have to keep that in mind next time I order my pizza.
How do you find mozzarella in a cave?
I get it from a creamery in Pennsylvania, actually.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, I order it, ship it down to me here in Alabama.
You're a worldly guy.
I don't know about that.
I do, because once the other day we were talking about you get your clothes from a place in Montreal. You get your cheese from a place in Pennsylvania. That's one of the things I like about the new world, the younger people of the new world. It means nothing to them. Like, I like some of that. Okay, I'll order that. And it comes like that part of the world has changed dramatically. And it's kind of interesting to have young Joe Desmond on here because yes. I personally enjoy his TikTok videos.
Oh, thank you.
Glad
you say that.
Whenever they come up, I enjoy watching them. I enjoy it because it's a great way to see the progress on the layout.
Yeah. It's just so easy and quick to do. Takes a few minutes.
Like you do it on your phone, I'm guessing, eh?
Absolutely. Yeah. Usually what happens is I'll come down here for the morning. I do, now that I'm retired, I do morning coffee and I come down here and I run some trains. And right as I'm wrapping up before I go do my events for the day, I'm like, all right, let me shoot a quick video, pull out my phone, a little 30-second clip. Then later when I'm doing my lunch or sitting with the kids having snack after school, I'll just sit there and put it up on TikTok. It's beautiful.
I like the TikTok videos, and I'm looking at one here from, I think it was in 23. Hang on here, and now it's on full screen. I'm not hip enough to work it. This is from August of 2023. And you're building some scenery in a corner using foam, and it's time lapse. And I love these time lapse construction videos.
Okay,
I think they're the best.
Yeah,
because you get to see so much happening in such a short period of time.
Right.
I think that they're also really impactful to inspire you to get there in modeling, because it's not just I started a project, but you see the start, the middle, and the end, and it gives you the confidence to say, well, I could do that. And then you go out and you do it.
Yeah. And actually editing videos in high speed is actually a little easier than sitting there and editing in real time. I just find you can kind of just fudge it a little bit, when it's in the high speed. So yeah, high speed, and especially you got to think about your viewers. Most viewers really don't have that much time. So if you can compress it into that high speed where they can kind of like just watch the process come together, it's more enjoyable for them. So, and then you dub it to some music. Yeah. I like the high speed stuff.
I remember listening to Howard Stern once years ago, 5 years ago, maybe. I was listening to him only because whenever my son drives my car, whenever he takes me to the airport or we go somewhere, we always take my car because his car smells a little bit of the happy grass.
Ooh. Yeah.
And I'm like, we're going in my car. Because he doesn't smoke in his home.
Okay.
So in the wintertime, he usually ends up smoking sitting in his car. So then the car's not while he's driving, while he's stationary.
Of course.
Actually, my son is a very responsible adult. But anyways, what was I going to say? We drive
Howard Stern.
Oh, yeah. So anyways, he was saying that because when I get in the car, Howard Stern is almost always on when he's been driving it. And I remember, and I like Howard Stern, but yeah. I remember listening to him once and he said, don't send us any videos that are over 3 minutes. I'm not interested. And that always stuck with me, because I think, when I'm looking at a video, if I'm looking at a YouTube channel and it's like, if it's some guy building something and it's 20 minutes long, I'm not as inclined to start it up.
Yeah. YouTube. Well, that's the thing is if you're using YouTube and you're doing a YouTube short, that's really a different format. It's more a competitor to the TikTok. There's actually different audiences. I mean, if you look at the audiences that would watch my videos on YouTube that are 45 minutes long, they're in it for the long haul for a reason. So, but you can get into the metrics and check that. They show you the peaks and valleys of when people tune in and tune out on your videos. And mine really, they tune out in the outro, then they tune in as the high speed starts, then they tune out as the high speed ends. So you can see it on the bar graph. And you're right. It's people. It's time management. People are like I don't have all this time. So yeah, you're totally right.
Well, and the thing. Were you going to say something, Derek?
Oh no, go ahead. I'll ask my question next.
Okay. Well, the thing of it is, I think, Joe, that it's something we have to emphasize is that not only are you making YouTube videos or these TikTok videos, but you actually have a beautiful end scale layout that's really well done. I would say maybe this is something I've never said this before, but I would say your layout is of professional quality.
Well, thank you. I really, really appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you because it is my heart and soul. I have been down here and I know that I've said this time and time again. I'm like, I never thought it would take this long. And as a model railroader, I realized that, it seems like in your goal, as you get older, that you're like, oh, I'm retired. I'm going to have more free time. But it seems like it's the inverse with me. Like the older I get, the less and less time I have because my children are getting older now. I got an 11-year-old and a 5-year-old. They're getting more active. They have after school activities and all that. And I'm on to go. So really, I have one real good day down here to concentrate. So I got to be very industrious. I got to get in here and do what I got to do. So, and I always thought that the layout was going to be done by now, but unfortunately, life throws you curveballs. So I just keep persevering and getting through it, but I never sacrifice quality for time. If I know I only have a designated amount of time, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to concentrate on one thing and get it done right. So that's why that's why I can contribute it to the quality.
Go ahead, Derek.
Well, I think it's interesting that you're focused on finishing projects, right? Taking bite-sized chunks and focusing on getting them done. Because I think like when you finish something in this hobby, it gives you energy to continue on to the next thing.
Correct.
But when you have projects bogged down and stagnate, it takes away your energy for the hobby and you avoid other things because you're stuck on something that is stuck.
That is a great point, Derek. And I'll back you up on that and I'll give you an example. So this area behind me, I don't know if you guys have your cameras on, but right behind where I'm sitting, there's a section of track here. I call it the southern end of the layout. And this end of the layout has been problematic with its turnouts. So I knew that I didn't want to finish scenery because I knew the track work was going to have to be all redone. So it's kind of been on pause. But then the problem is model railroaders get this thing called analysis by paralysis.
Oh, yeah.
So I got into this project thinking, okay, the key fix is I'm going to rip out these commercial grade turnouts and I'm going to hand build fast tracks turnouts. Okay. I talked about it numerous times. The problem is with me, okay, I have to learn how to do something right. And I get into this analysis phase where I keep going and it paralyzes me. And learning this new trait of hand building turnouts, I was just dreading. So I was pushing it off. So much to the fact that I actually got all the materials together and sat down and started building one. The first one, complete abomination. Failed miserably. Second time I tried it, it was almost there, but then I tried to make some adjustments by resoldering, and the PC board ties fell apart and the whole thing. So that was number 2. So then the third time around, now all along I'm being coached by my really good friend, Ben Horn from North Carolina. And he was giving me tips and pointers. So I get the third one done, right? I'm like, okay, I got it. So then I go ahead and build 3 more right after that. So I have 4 turnouts. So then my analysis starts kicking in on this. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm a mechanic. I'm an old school mechanic from the Navy. When you do a job, you fix a torpedo tube, you do something, you have to check that your repairs are correct. You have to check that it's in tolerances. How do I check these turnouts tolerances? I'm like, I don't know. So then I just sat there for weeks thinking, how am I going to test these turnouts now? Because I don't want to rip all my main line out because I'm still running trains and replace these hand-built fast tracks to find out that they're not working. So what I finally came to the solution is I tore out the runaround down on the in Lakehurst because there was one of those turnouts that needed to be replaced, put in my ones that I built, went to go test it. No, failed. What happened was the locomotive would go over and did a Dukes of Hazzard over the frog. Boom. Done. So I'm like, all right, maybe it was just that one. Go to the next one in the series. Same thing. Same result. All 4. Done. I'm like, oh boy. So good thing I didn't rip out the whole layout to find out that I built 6 turnouts and it's been a failure. Now, listen, I am not faulting Fax Tracks on this one because they are a premier company. They have premier products. The stuff that they do, their videos are amazing. To be able to teach you how to build a hand-built turnout, that is a skill set. And I'm telling you, I've been in model railroading for 35 plus years. And building a hand-built turnout is a skill set, especially in scale, because there's tight tolerances. So now as we're talking, this all came about last week and a half ago. I put a Facebook Live about it. So now I'm building my 7th version of a hand-built turnout. So you can see how this whole process just delays me from quote-unquote finishing the layout. Now, everybody says, well, layout's never finished, Joe. You don't ever finish layout. Well, I agree with you. But I at least want to have fully scenic areas. I can't stand looking at the pink foam anymore. So that's my long-winded answer, Derek.
No, that's great. And I think like when it comes to layouts, there's a minimum standard of organization, cleanliness, completion that's unique to each of us that we aspire to achieve. And so, sure, layout's not done, but your version of done is different from somebody else's version of done. And I think we're model railroaders, we're obsessive people, right? Like if you're a rivet counter or even if you're a freelancer, right?
Yep.
You're dreaming, you're conceptualizing, you're planning. We're systems people, right? The interplay of interchanging cars and trains and operations, right? We're very intricate, systems-minded people. But if you don't have an acknowledgement or recognition of your own standards, the layout can just collapse under the weight of your failed expectations. And so I think, Joe, you do a good job of setting expectations, communicating them, and then working to meet them, even if it's challenging. You don't walk away because you know what you're trying to achieve at the end of the day. And that's really important.
Yeah. So when I designed this layout of my own accord, now, don't forget, I didn't use any kind of professional help designing it. I didn't use any computer-aided drafting. I did it all on hand-drawn paper because I know how to draw to scale. So I did that. And of course, I made a lot of errors. I over-designed. I kind of over-expected. So there was a lot of omissions and stuff. But the key concept I kept when I was designing this layout is, Lionel, you're going to have to quote me, or you're going to have to help me with this because I'm bad with remembering. I use the key core concept that Tony Coaster introduced, the LDE format, the layout design elements. So each little section of this layout is a separate layout design element. So even though I'm complaining that I have 3 sections not fully scenic, the layout is still a full functioning layout. It's just that those little areas are still to be done. So if you watch my videos and see my progress throughout the layout of quote unquote completing each area, you can see that the layout design elements that I have built into this.
Well, I think that's okay. I'll go ahead. I think that's the dirty little secret of model railroading is that it can be very demoralizing, while at the same time it's very fulfilling.
Correct.
Yes.
That is a great way of putting it.
Because
there are peaks and valleys. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, like we got a perfect. We've got Derek, who's got a 1 foot by 8 foot square layout. We've got, how big is your layout, Joe?
The room size is 11 by 14.
Yeah, so it's 11 by 14. It's end.
So
it's end scale. So it's a 22 by 28 foot, 20 by 30 foot layout in HO scale, which is what
Correct.
mine was,
Mm-hmm.
and which takes up a lot of scenery. And and we have our friend Tom Jacobs, the Queso Cowboy, the greatest nickname in all of AML land. And I mean, he's building one in a designated outbuilding, and
that layout is tremendous.
it is beautiful,
unbelievable.
But I've taught, I know he got demoralized because it wasn't going as fast as he thought. And everybody thinks that the layout building should go faster. And then they start to get demoralized because things aren't going the way they should. And it's kind of like, yeah, but that's kind of what the hobby is. It's kind of, it's a weird hobby that way. And then in that it's this intensive labor of love that kind of, the artists are from the 17th century of Italy where they're, cutting their ears off and painting the Sistine Chapel. And it's a lifelong ambition.
Yeah, I constantly tell newcomers to the hobby that I meet, that I have the privilege to meet, is that it is a labor of love, because you're going to have ups and downs. There is nobody out there. I mean, the greatest minds of model routing, Tony Custer, Andy Sperano, the list can go on. They didn't even know everything about the hobby. It is so intensive out there. You're going to be thrown things on your plate in your design or your building of your layout. And you're just going to scratch your head and you're like, I don't know what to do. Nobody ever told me about this. And that's what I keep telling them, is you just got to keep pushing through, use your resources and work the problem.
It's kind of like running a marathon, right? It's not about running really fast.
That's correct.
It's about managing your energy and your emotional state and your mental state and your energy. Yeah, managing every facet of the run to make sure that you can actually finish. Not that I'm a marathon runner. Anybody is wondering.
Well, you could have fooled me.
Right. Okay.
But I think it's like, you say you got frustrated with doing social media and why are you doing it? But I think the problem with model railroading too is you're doing a service for a good number of people. Like we talked about before, if you got 200 people in a room and they're all there because they want to be there because of what you're doing, that's a hell of a party. And,
it is.
And in today's world, it seems like if you don't have 50,000 followers, well, you're a failure. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know now. I'm beginning to think the opposite, because I have so many people, that have come to me in the last little while, please keep the podcast going. And I'm thinking, okay, and if it matters to 30 people, well, that might be good enough.
Well, listen, I mean, I've talked about it in the past where, I've been a huge proponent of social media, especially for model routers. But I think what you're really got to think about right now is when you look at these metrics of, you have X amount of followers, but then you post, but you're only getting 100 likes out of your 2,000 followers. So what's going on there? And I think what's happening is you have to keep in mind is I think model railroaders are on a social media hangover. I think the party came to an end, and I think they're just like kind of backing away from social media. I think they're putting everything at arm's length. And I don't think it's because they don't, I just think they're just, because of the current events that happened over the last couple of years, I think they've kind of just like, okay, I don't want to talk to you right now. So I'm not sure what's going on. I have suspicions, but I don't know. It's a little disheartening.
You're a deep thinker, Derek. What do you think about that comment?
Yeah, I think Joe's onto something. The world has gotten so messy and so complicated that there are many times that I've said to my wife or to my friends that I'm living in a world that's too big and I'm too attached to everything that's going on around me. And by around me, I mean in my city, my state, my country, the world. And I want to live a smaller life. Our brains, we've evolved to control control and process the activity in our immediate vicinity. We are not evolved to interpret and understand and process the trauma and the happenings of the entire world all at once. And so we have this position where the technology we have access to, the information we have access to, is too advanced for our brains to handle. And so what does that mean? It means that you're either addicted to the information and you're constantly plugged in, or you feel like you're missing the party. And I think that what we have to do is decide, are we going to be completely plugged in? Are we going to be completely unplugged? Or are we going to find a way in the middle to manage, just like we manage the mental health and the emotional health side of the hobby, are we going to be able to manage the mental health and the emotional side of social media and have a good relationship with it so that it builds us up, not tears us down? And frankly, like earlier, Joe, when we started the podcast, you're talking about looking at the facts and figures of your engagement in your videos. That made me so anxious thinking about like, do people like me? People like me at the 2-minute mark? People like me at the 6-minute mark? I think that would drive me crazy.
Well,
so I wonder how you manage that as a content creator.
Well, because I want to know how the effort that I'm putting in is it going to be benefit. So I look at it from that perspective. I don't look at it from do people like me or not. I look at the metrics of, is my investment in this product, this piece of work, this art, is it worth the outcome? Am I getting a return on it? And that's why I get into the metrics. Is I want to see is, what are people liking about the video, or what are they not liking about the video? Because social media and video editing is not my hobby. I don't like it. I just do it. I do it to support my main hobby. My main hobby is model rarity. That's what I love. That's what I always love. And when the social media becomes to infringe on my model rarity time, then that's when I'm going to say, okay, it's enough.
And yet your TikTok videos, for me particularly, those are the ones I probably look at the most. Or if you started doing, the video, YouTube shorts, like I get a lot out of that because it's kind of like checking in with Joe.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, I don't necessarily look for how-tos or secrets of how to be happy being a model railroader.
Yeah.
But I do like checking in with Joe. Okay. Joe made a 1.5-minute long TikTok. What's he doing now? Okay. He's doing this and that and the next thing. And it makes you feel connected. Makes me feel connected to somebody that maybe I haven't talked to for a year.
Right.
And so I see a great value in that, but it's what you guys are talking about. It's almost gone goofy the other way, where now people are so in, it's like, you're right. I think something has happened, and it's almost like, because it's a small, I don't like it when people say it's a niche hobby, because I think there are so many people that like trains. There are so many people, from my friend who is a professional golfer and spent his entire life being a professional golfer and a club pro, and we're friends, but he likes trains, but he doesn't have a model railroad. He doesn't go to operating sessions, but I've been with him, and he'll say to me, "Oh, geez, there's a Jeep 40 from, the BNSF. I saw a Jeep 40 from the BNSF going along that crossing up on Highway 27. I mean, I'll never forget the day he did that. That was like 10 years ago. And I'm like, what?
There's a lot of closet model railroader / rail fans out there, and you would be surprised.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, where did you come from? Yeah. So I get a guy I used to work with. He's still sending me videos. He's like, hey, I just was driving. I saw this train parked over here on Roycefield Road. Is that a good catch? I was like, yeah, man, that's really cool. So this guy who doesn't know anything about trains just loves watching them. So yeah, totally. I agree.
Yeah. I think I talked on another podcast about.
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Derek. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to get this thought out on my last statement. Is Lionel? The proof is in the pudding. Look at the videos of the big boy running. How many thousands of people standing trackside? People don't even model railroad. They're just out there watching this train.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Joe, that's a great point.
Well, that's a fabulous point. Look at how popular the Polar Express is. Our friend Marcus Newbacher, who's at the North Carolina Transportation Museum, they have 60,000 riders, and usually the tickets are sold out before the end of within a few weeks.
Well, look at the Reading and Northern brought the T1 back. You
Yeah.
can't even get within 1 mile of that train to take a picture because there's so many people standing trackside.
Or the popularity of the nickel plate 765.
Oh, yeah. Love to go see that thing, but you can't even get close.
And then if you consider that the people who are enjoying the hobby that way, seeing those steam engines, seeing the rail fan and like the historical preservation stuff, if 5 to 10% of those become model railroaders over time, the hobby is going to explode even more. It's going to accelerate even more.
Oh, yeah.
I think rail fanning and preservation is the gateway drug to model railroading.
And I don't know what happened over the last 5 years, but they are doing some incredible preservation work. Everywhere you turn around, somebody's bringing a new steam locomotive online. And look at the East Broad Top came out of nowhere.
Well, yeah. Look at the East Broad Top. Like, oh my God! Like, what is happening there?
They have a staff of 150 volunteers that have laid what 7.5 miles, hand laid 7.5 miles of narrow gauge track.
That's going to bring so much economic influence to the area.
That's good. That's going to be the big. You know who they're going to compete with is going to be Strasbourg.
Yeah, and people are going to travel from around the world to see the East Broad Top.
Yep,
around the world. And,
of course.
And I mean, I think it's kind of like, okay, you know, and you got manufacturers that are producing models faster than they can think about it, and it's going to be like, okay, it's almost like, how is this all going to come together?
Yeah.
You know, because on the other hand, you got, you know, threats of tariffs, and okay, is the price of locomotives going to jump by 25%, and is that going to have an effect on the hobby? And I don't really think it is that much, because, you know, you have people that always cry, "Oh my God, the hobby's so expensive," and I always go to, yeah.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. You have people crying about the price of locomotives, but there's lining up to pre-order.
Yeah.
So you can't complain about price, then turn around and get in a pre-order line. It's just, they're going to buy it no matter what.
And these are the same people that, you know, there's a lot of those people that would be crying about the price that would be spending $5,000 on a Super Bowl ticket.
True.
Or $1,000 to go see the boss, Bruce Springsteen.
Ugh.
And I mean, I always talk about how some of my Atlas yellow box locomotives, some 35 years later, they still run like the day I bought them. I
got these in-scale Atlas U25Bs. They're about 15 years old. Ben Horn sold me them. They are the slow speed motor setup that was kind of really popular in the early 2000s. So they're about 20 years old. They run like a Swiss watch. They are my best locomotives that I have.
Yeah. And they'll go forever. They'll never stop. Like, I got some old Atlas yellow box RS3s and Jeep 7s that I would be interested in how many actual miles they've put on. You know, it's got to be like 100 miles or something that they've gone running it back and forth across the layout. Mm-hmm. They go forever. Well, this is a great conversation about.
So
go ahead.
So I wanted to change gears and tell you about some positive stuff that happened this summer. I think you'll get a real kick out of it. So the InScale Enthusiast Show decided that they were going to come to Bethlehem over in Pennsylvania. So Tony Bowen reached out to me last year and said, "Hey, you see the InScale Enthusiast Show's coming in Bethlehem?" I said, yeah, I'm actually thinking about going. He goes, "Well, I've already bought my tickets." He says, "So can I come down and see you?" I said, "Tony, you don't even have to ask. Just come." So him and his friend Mike drove out, from Iowa to go to Bethlehem, and finally got to meet Tony in person. And so he texted me a couple days before, and he said, "Hey, do you think you can come see the layout?" And I just responded, "If you don't come, I'll be highly offended." So we went to the show. I brought my 11-year-old daughter, Caitlin, and she wanted to come, and we had a great time at the show. We met up with Tony. It was just such a pleasure to meet him in person and shake his hand. And then him and Mike and my good buddy Ben Horn from North Carolina, who I met for the very first time at that show as well, all came back to my house, and we ran an op session here. And I had a blast.
You know, I think that this is bringing me back to our last conversation about people disengaging from social media. I wonder if people like Lionel in this podcast and us all going on social media, we're out of our basements now. We're kind of out of the closet as model railroaders. And so we all came together. But now, instead of participating in social media, I wonder if we're moving into this world where our social media friendships are becoming real world friendships.
Oh,
And,
totally.
and
Totally.
yeah, and if that's the next sort of renaissance in the hobby, is the sort of not the degradation, but the replacement of the trains as the focus of the hobby, and instead the fellowship, not just like the likes and the dislikes and the comments on social media, but the true like friendships, the deep, real friendships, in person friendships that are coming out of the hobby that are really positive. If that is sort of the where some of that social energy is going. I met a bunch of people at in Springfield this year, and now like in a couple weeks, I'm doing a evening call with Matt Milligan, who I met at Springfield. Really enjoyed conversation with him, and we're just gonna hop on a Zoom call and hang out in a couple weeks because we didn't get to finish our conversations that we had at Springfield. Right? I think the transcendence of the hobby, or the replacement of the hobby as being about the trains instead of being about the people, is really powerful. And it's really healthy for all of us too, I think. And Joe, your example is perfect of sort of online friendships becoming real world friendships, in person friendships. It's really powerful in this day and age.
Well, and it was amazing the people that I met there. I mean, first of all, I met a guy who I didn't even know. I followed him for years on YouTube. His name is Scott Teague, and you may have remembered him. He had a Pokey Division, not NS in scale layout, and he kind of finished his layout. So then he started experimenting with building the PVC train horn. So you'll see those pop up on YouTube every now and again. And I loved following him. And all of a sudden, this guy, this huge, giant man, he stood up. He has to be 6 something. This guy is just a big, tall guy. He comes over. He goes, "Joe Desmond?" I'm like, "Yes, can I help you?" He goes, "I'm Scott Teague." I said, "Get out of here." I met him. It was just the most amazing experience. And he was there. So I met him. The people just coming up to me and my daughter was just, it was thrilling. And they were just like, "Hi, I watch your videos. It's great. I'm glad you're here." And my daughter looks at me. She goes, "Dad, who are all these people?" I go, "They're all my followers, Kate." So
Okay.
it was just a great time.
Okay, so we're almost to the end of this particular show, but let's have that conversation. Let's finish on that conversation. You say you're frustrated with social media and you don't get yet when you get out of the basement and you go to this N scale enthusiast event, you've got all these people coming up to you going, "Hey Joe, really enjoy your stuff," and that. And it's like that's got to be incredibly fulfilling.
It is fulfilling, and it makes you think. You're like, what am I doing here?
Yeah. Like I'm wondering if our model railroaders trying to get too much out of their social media.
I think so, Lionel. I think what happened in the early beginnings is everybody's like, "Yes, let's go to YouTube. We can make money. We can turn this hobby into a money. I'm going to be a YouTube star, and I'm going to make all kinds of money. I'm going to quit my job." And then what happened was there's just so much that occurred in the YouTube world, because I was on YouTube very, very early before Google owned it, and you had the clickgate thing, then you had the AdGate thing, and all the metrics changed, and then people were like, "Wait a minute, I'm not making money," and they're watching these people who are getting all this money on YouTube, and it's because they're getting hundreds of thousands of views. So that's the differentiation. What model railroaders need to realize: if you're going into YouTube, you're not going to make a living, okay? Because your audience is very restrictive, okay? So in order to bridge that gap, to make that a full-time job, you need to be into the 100,000 views or above. 100,000 views or above. And I'm not just talking about putting a video up and let it run for 5 years. I'm talking about within a month. Because people have commented on it and said the only way that you can do that is you have to break that barrier. Model railroaders, we can't get through that barrier, because we have a very limited audience. So you need to, if you're going into YouTube or social media as a model railroader, you need to realize that you're doing it as a hobby.
Okay, Derek, like, what do you think about that? Like, I think that, like, I've been toying with the idea for a couple of years now, 2 or 3 years, at least, maybe 4 or 5, I've felt like the podcast is too restrictive because I'll see like there's a guy on YouTube I'm dying to interview, and he goes under RC Geek, and he's this guy, and there's this one particular series of videos he built this beautiful RC plane, just gorgeous. And what I like about his videos, he's very honest. Like he goes through and he built all these videos of building this gorgeous plane, and he takes it out. Him and his buddy take it out. They're going to fly it for the first time, and the thing's airborne for like a minute and a half, and then it's a pile of rubble.
I'm laughing because I know where this is going, but I'm crying inside because you have to feel for those people.
Yeah,
the laughter is hiding the pain.
Yeah, so it's like I'm dying to interview him, and I'm thinking I'm to heck with it. I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways and put it on A Modeler's Life because it's like I want to talk to this guy.
Yeah,
because it just seems interesting. And I'm wondering what I was leading up to is, are model railroaders looking for too much out of their social media, too much return out of their social media, when in actual fact, what it is just another opportunity for Joe to meet people, or just
Correct.
Another opportunity for Derek to meet people. And
I think that's a profound statement. I think that's correct.
There's a big difference to me between like a cheap dopamine hit from listening to the podcast or seeing a video I like, and the overwhelming feeling of personal satisfaction that you get from finishing something on your layout. And like, I could watch 10 YouTube videos and be at like a 2, but I could paint the fascia on my layout and be at a 10 for days. Right? I think that social media has a role. It makes the hobby accessible to people who can't currently do it. YouTube has a role because it helps you meet people, but it's not a replacement for getting in there and doing stuff. And I think what social media can be is it can be enablement. It can be meeting people, forming deeper friendships, or it can be seeing people screw up and getting rid of the fear of attempting a fast track turnout number 6. Or, for years I was afraid of weathering freight cars because I'd screw them up. And then I realized I've got like 50 box cars here in this drawer. What does it matter if I screw one up? And I started doing it, and I haven't been able to stop. I think that we need to use social media for an intended purpose, but we need to recognize that it's not a direct replacement for the hobby. It can magnify, it can enable you, but it can't replace it.
I think that's a huge statement. I think that's the highlight of this particular podcast, is discovering that really for model railroaders, social media is a way to connect with people, not a way to make money, become popular, or anything else. It's a way to connect with people, And with that, it's now 45 minutes, and Rod Clifton from Australia insists that he's okay with the shows being shorter. So this show is now over. And if you'd like to hear more of what our buddy Joe has to say, because I got a lot of questions I've written down here over the last 45 minutes. So we're going to have to do part 2. Are you okay with that, Joe? Are you up for a part 2?
I'll do as many parts as you want, buddy.
Well, eventually your kids are going to come home from school. So.
Well, yeah, eventually.
Yeah. So. All right, Derek, can you give out our email address?
I can.
Okay.
If you're interested in emailing us, you can reach us at amodellerslife@gmail.com. That's modeler with 1 L, like AML, not 2 L's, like Conrail and N-Scale.
There you go. Nice. Very nicely done.
I love it.
And if you didn't catch our email address, you can go to our website, amodellerslife.com, and click on the picture of the moderately agitated mailboy, particularly agitated state. They automatically, the email comes up, the address fills in, and you just got to put in your text. And if you really like this podcast and you'd like twice as much podcasting a week, you can go to our Patreon channel and click on the Patreon link on our website, amodellerslife.com. And boom, you get twice as much podcasting a week. And on the other channel, it's all sorts of, it's back porch. It's a little more locker room. It's viewer mail. It's all sorts of things. The future We have no idea what the future holds, but it's there. And the best part about of the Patreon channel is the Wednesday night chats. Lots and lots of people get together on Wednesday night. Patreon members, because these are people that are fairly dedicated to the podcast. They've decided to sign up. They've decided to support the podcast, and that's what they have in common. When they get to their Wednesday night chat, they're all people that are interested in the podcast and what's happening on it. So I highly recommend that you join it, and that's just $5 a month. And
those sessions are incredible, Lionel. I just recently started going,
right,
and I get so much out of it. I was trying to describe to my wife that there were 25 or 30 people on last night, and she was like, "Was there a moderator? Was there an agenda? Was there an outline?" I said, "No, we're all just friends, and we're all just hanging out and talking about the hobby and enjoying each other's company. And if the conversation works on its own, it's a really powerful group of people and a really authentic conversation."
Yeah, and I think that's one of the keys to. I think that's what we got to explore some more about social media. Is that what it does? Is it brings people together more than anything? I think everybody's gotten lost in. Oh my God, I've got 57,000 subscribers. Well, that's great, but you're not going to know but 10 of them. You know.
Well, but the hazard is social media can bring us together, or it can tear us apart.
Yes, we've experienced a little bit of that recently.
Oh boy.
And we'll leave it at that. So Joe, at the end of the show, we're going to ask you a question, and
I'm ready.
You need to answer.
I'm ready.
Okay. So remember, a Modeler's Life podcast is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10
in-scale model raritors.
Transportation for AML guests provided by Diamond Limousine. Diamond Limousine, where all of our vehicles are true diamonds in the rough.
It's another Lincoln Homer.